Hi, sixth grade students. This is Mrs. Guido. For your reading tonight, Chapter 1, Section 1, we are going to be reading about what we've been learning about in class. So a lot of this or all of this will be familiar. Please use this text to answer the questions for your homework tonight. Section 1, Studying the Distant Past. Some key ideas for this reading. Scientists use fossils and artifacts to draw conclusions about early humans. And archaeological evidence indicates that human life began in Africa. Some key terms you'll notice in your reading tonight are anthropology, archaeologist, prehistory, fossil, geologist, and artifact. Let's begin. We are all interested in people, but certain people, called anthropologists, have made a science out of studying people. Anthropology is the study of how human beings behave, how they act together, where they came from, and what makes one group of people different from another. In this section, we will look at the work of a particular group of anthropologists known as archaeologists. Archaeologists study human life in the past by examining the things that people left behind. Study of early humans. Learning about early humans is not easy. Until about 5,000 years ago, people had no way to write things down. To study prehistory, or the time before written records, archaeologists look for the places where people may have lived. Hunting for fossils. To learn about the earliest humans, archaeologists depend mainly on fossils. Fossils are hardened remains or imprints of living things that existed long ago. These remains may include plants, feathers, bones, and even footprints that are millions of years old. Fossils form in several ways. For example, after a living thing dies, it may quickly become covered by sand or mud. Once covered, the soft parts of the plant or animal rot away. We're on the second page. The harder parts such as bones, teeth, or woody stems last much longer. Over many years, minerals from the soil slowly replace this once living material. What remains is a rock-like copy of the original. Fossilized bones of early humans are rare. A complete fossil skeleton is even rarer. Fossil hunters usually find a bone here or a tooth there. Still, studying a tooth can show what kind of food early people ate. Bones tell us about the size and structure of an early human's body. Just to go back, this caption reads, "Scientists study fossils like this skull to learn about early human life." Dating ancient remains. Archaeologists use several methods for determining the age of fossils and other prehistoric objects. In this work, they get valuable information from geologists, or scientists who study the physical materials of Earth itself, such as soil and rocks. One dating method is to compare objects found in similar layers of rock or soil. Objects found in lower layers are generally older than those found in upper layers. Archaeologists may also compare an object with similar fossil or artifact whose age is already known. Radioactive dating is another method for determining the age of very old objects. Both living things and rocks contain radioactive elements that decay or break down over time. By measuring the amount of radioactive material left, scientists can tell when an object was formed. In recent years, scientists have developed other methods to study fossils. They use DNA to compare human remains from the past with people living today. Genetic evidence has uncovered new information about how people changed and how they moved from place to place. Searching for artifacts. The earliest humans lived millions of years ago. To study prehistoric people who lived more recently, archaeologists look for old settlements such as villages or campsites. Such sites often lie buried beneath layers of dirt. Archaeologists must carefully excavate or uncover these sites to learn about the people who once lived there. This caption reads, "Thanks to advanced technology, such as radioactive dating, figuring out the ages of fossils and other remains is not just guesswork." Excuse me. As archaeologists dig up a site, they look for artifacts such as tools, pottery, or weapons. Artifacts are objects made and used by humans. They then try to identify patterns, examining what artifacts are found together in the same spot. Artifacts found in an ancient campsite can help archaeologists understand how the people who once camped there hunted for food or what they ate. Some questions, however, are difficult to answer by studying artifacts. For example, archaeologists excavating old campsites have found animal bones carved with strange designs. Archaeologists can identify the animals from which the bones came and describe the tools used to carve the designs, but they cannot explain why people created these fascinating artifacts. The hunt for early humans. Where did people first appear on Earth? For a long time, scientists could not agree on the answer. Then, in 1960, British archaeologists Mary and Louis Leakey discovered a piece of a human-like skull at Olduvai Gorge in East Africa. As you read, the Leakeys called their find Homo habilis, meaning handyman, because evidence showed that these early humans made and used tools. Tests showed that the Homo habilis fossils were at least 1.75 million years old. From that point on, the search for the origins of humankind has largely focused on Africa. African beginnings. On November 30th, 1974, American fossil hunter Donald Johanson made a discovery that helped shape how scientists view early human history. For 3 years, Johanson had been searching for evidence of early humans in Ethiopia, a country in East Africa. Excuse me. Johanson later recalled, "We had found fossilized remains of all kinds of animals: elephants, rhinos, gazelles, monkeys, and so on. But our main goal, of course, was to find as many human ancestor fossils as we could." On this November morning, it was about noon, I was heading back to my Land Rover to drive back to camp, and I happened to look over my right shoulder. And as I did so, I saw a fragment of bone which I recognized as coming from the elbow region in a skeleton. There was a piece of a leg, there was a piece of a pelvis, there was a piece of a jaw, there was a piece of a skull. And I realized almost instantaneously that we had part of a skeleton. Normally, we are happy to find a fragment of a jaw, a few isolated teeth, a bit of an arm, a bit of a skull. But to find associated body parts is extremely rare. Excuse me. These were Donald Johanson's words from January 25th, 1991. After 2 weeks of careful searching, Johanson and his team had uncovered hundreds of pieces of bone. They decided that all the bones belonged to one individual because they did not find two examples of any one type of bone. They determined that she was a 3.5-foot tall woman. Johanson named her Lucy, after a song by the Beatles. What you'll notice on this page will be similar to what we learned about in class in the videos we watched about archaeological dig sites. Uncovering the past. On an archaeological dig, people must often work in cramped conditions. They map the site, dividing into grids. Then they patiently sift through layers of soil and preserving and sketching what they find. The big find for the day may be a fragment of a pot, but every find tells us a little more about the past. Some captions on this page. Using a brush, the archaeologist carefully removes the dirt around an artifact. Brushes, chisels, and picks are important parts of an archaeologist's toolkit. This map contains information about fossil finds in Africa. Johansson's team found some 40% of Lucy's skeleton. The bones of her legs, pelvis, ankle, and spine suggest that, like us, she walked upright on two legs. However, she lived 3.2 million years ago. Since then, even older fossils have been found in Africa. In 1992, American anthropologist Tim White found remains of humans who lived in Ethiopia at least 4.4 million years ago. Excuse me. Beginning with a single tooth, White's team uncovered more fragments. Finally, in 2009, White unveiled a nearly complete skeleton of a female that he named Artie. More than 1,000,000 years older than Lucy, Artie was taller and heavier. She probably walked upright, but slowly and awkwardly. Search for the oldest one. Discoveries such as Lucy and Artie have led most scientists to conclude, or decide as a result of thinking or reasoning, that humankind began in East Africa about 4.5 million years ago. But not everyone agrees. Some argue that human life may have developed separately in different parts of the world. Others agree that human life started in Africa, but in a different region. French fossil hunter Michael Brunet is one of those who believes that human life started elsewhere in Africa. In 2001, Brunet had found a brown, human-like skull in the country of Chad. Tests showed the skull to be nearly 7 million years old. That makes it, says Brunet, the quote-unquote oldest one. Brunet's discovery has raised many questions. Chad is in Central Africa. Did humankind begin there rather than in East Africa? The skull Brunet found is much older than all the other human fossils discovered so far. Does this mean that humankind is older than scientists once thought? The skull found in Chad looks more ape-like than other early human skulls. Does this mean that it may not be an early human skull at all? Scientists will continue to look for answers to questions like these. Meanwhile, the search for ancient human fossils continues. This is the beginning of the story, says Brunet of his work in Chad. Just the beginning. Now work to answer your questions that you have for homework tonight.